Hey everyone, it's Nick Valenti with NJ Valenti Art, and in today's video I'm going to show you how to create this 80s sunset drive scene step by step. It's perfect for beginners and anyone new to Affinity Designer. So let's get started. Okay, so I have Affinity Designer open, and I will come up here to File, New, and right under Web we're going to go ahead and use the Social Media Square Post. I always like to change the DPI to 300. Can hit Enter on that, and then I will click Create. I'm going to select the rectangle tool, and starting on the upper left, I will click and drag to cover our whole artboard. Then selecting our gradient tool and pulling down from the top, we'll generate this basic gradient here. And then clicking on the color window, this first color, I want it to be a nice bright yellow. So something right about here, a little bit closer to white. I'll go ahead and click on this line right here in the middle, selecting this. I want this to be a very nice and bright orange. So almost to the very tip of that triangle, but just a hair back. And for our last color window here, we'll go ahead and select a nice medium purple. Now I do want to go ahead and just pull this up a hair, and I want to bring this purple gradient up to where it starts just below or just about halfway down the canvas. I'm going to select the rectangle tool again, and for the bottom third I'm going to create another smaller rectangle. I can pull the sides in here just a bit. Now I want to go ahead and make sure that I turn off the stroke, and for the fill color I'm going to select a very dark purple. Now our next step, I want to go ahead and create the sun. Let's get the main shape in here. So I'm going to come over to our ellipse tool, and holding shift I will click and drag, create a nice large circle. I want to take up a good portion of our space here. Now I will come over and I want to change this color to a nice bright yellow, and with our gradient tool I'll click and drag. I'll come up to the gradient color window here, and this darker color here, I actually want to go ahead and make this lighter. So it's very close and very similar to the first initial light yellow that we picked for the background. So with that selected, I want to go ahead now and drag this ellipse over in our layers panel down below the rectangle for our ground layer here. Now to create the road, I'll go ahead and select the rectangle tool. Just create a nice rectangle just like that in the middle. I want to come up here and select the purple color. I want to drag this down to just about a medium gray, just about in the middle there, maybe a little bit closer, a hair lighter, but in that gray purple area there. Now up here in our context toolbar, I do want to go ahead and hit convert to curves. I'll select this first node here, and holding shift I will just drag this over. Now selecting the right node, holding shift again and dragging it even further. I'll come down to our bottom left, hold shift and drag out. Leave just a little bit of that ground open. I'll do the same for the other side, clicking and holding shift to keep it in a straight line. And I can, in the layers panel, click this top curve and drag it into our rectangle. If I need to, I can always adjust these nodes a little bit more. So I'll come back up here to the left node. So I want to make sure it's going straight to the center there. Now what we can go ahead and do to get our center yellow line, I'm going to go ahead and duplicate that curve. We'll change it to our bright yellow. And now, holding Control, go ahead and make that fairly skinny. On our move tool, we could go ahead and just center it right down the road there. Now, in order to break this line up, I'll go ahead and select our rectangle tool again. I'll zoom in here just a bit. I'll create a rectangle right across. I will select, you can select any color. I'll select this darker purple here. I just like to see the difference between the lines. and I will hold Alt and Shift and drag straight up. I will then come and select this bottom and make it just a little bit skinnier. Now once I've done that, I'll hit Control and J to power duplicate. And now in this window, in the Layers panel, with this top rectangle selected, I'll hold Shift. And I will come up here to our Boolean options and click on Subtract. So now we've got our segmented yellow middle line. In order to create the yellow lines on the side, I'll simply come in here. I'll start right here, go all the way here. Turn that to our yellow color. Now this curve here in the Layers panel, I'm going to go ahead and drag it into our lighter gray. And then I will come up to our Move tool, holding Alt and Shift, drag it across. I will come up here and click on Flip Horizontal, continuing to hold Shift, pull that off to the side. Now we will have to adjust this a little bit, so I'm going to rotate it and hold Shift and just pull it further off to the side. So something just like that. Okay, so with the road pretty much set, I'm going to go ahead and we'll come up here in our Layers panel, and I'll turn off this front rectangle. I want to get a good look at our sun. So I want to go ahead and create some lines as the sun is fading into the background. So with the rectangle tool selected, and just below halfway, I'm going to go ahead and create a nice thin rectangle across there. And again, I'll change this to any one of the purple colors just so I could have a better look at what I'm doing here. Okay, so holding Alt and Shift, I'll drag straight down. I'll zoom in a bit, and I want to make this a little bit fatter, right? Now I will Control and J to power duplicate again. In the Layers panel, with the top rectangle selected, I will hold Shift and then Control to select the sun as well, and back up to our Boolean options where I can press and click Subtract. And I'll now give us a nice faded sun effect. And we'll turn on our front rectangle here, and I can always take the sun and I can always bump it up just a bit. So something just like that. Next, I'd like to go ahead and create some buildings for our background. So I'm going to come over to our rectangle tool. I will zoom in, and I will just simply click and drag for a nice thin rectangle. Now this, I do want to select the darker purple we have. With our Move tool, I can hold Alt to duplicate, and holding this edge, I can make one a little bit taller. I'm not holding Shift. I want them to be able to move around like this. If I held Shift, it would scale proportionately. So I want a little bit more control. We'll make something a little bit fatter. Again, these buildings, if you've ever seen a cityscape, the buildings are all different sizes and different shapes. So I'm going to go ahead and continue to create some various buildings, different shapes. And I just want to make sure that when I'm creating the buildings, that the tops of the buildings do not line up perfectly with the edge of the sun. That'll create what's called a tangent in art, and will be very distracting to the eye. Oh, we'll bring one back over here. We'll continue to make all these little buildings. Some may be closer, some may be further away from each other. Do all different size shapes just to keep them interesting. Now in our Layers panel, with the top rectangle selected, I'll scroll down holding Shift to select all of the buildings. I'll then hold Alt and Shift to bring them across. I do want to come up here and click on Flip Horizontal. Something like that. I'll click on this one and create just a few more over there. Now back to our Layers panel. On the top rectangle selected again, I will scroll down, and holding Shift, I will select all of them. Right click and group. I will name this group Buildings. And I will drag that below our road rectangle layer. We can move around just a bit. So we've created our buildings for our background. Okay, so I want to create some sort of kind of reflection of the sun, this little starburst effect on the ground, and this will give us some action and add some movement to the scene. So I'm going to come up here and select our pen tool. We'll scroll in a little bit, and right here at the horizon, I'm going to click and hold shift. I just want to create these thin little spikes, these little burst effects. I will come back here to just below our first node. Let's click, and then click our first node to close that shape. With our gradient tool, I will click and drag, and we'll come up to our gradient window, and we're going to go ahead and do the same colors that we used for our background. So a nice bright yellow. We'll click the line to create another node and select this color window for a nice bright orange. And again, the last circle here, we'll click on and we'll make this a nice medium purple. Now I could come down here to gradient and click on reverse. And we'll put the purple gradient out here and our white gradient, lighter yellow gradient, closer to the center there. I could adjust this a bit. Now with our move tool selected, I'll hold Alt and Shift. Alt to duplicate it and Shift to keep it directly in line. And I'll come up here to flip horizontal. Continuing to hold Shift, we'll drag this over. And now in our layers panel, I will select both of these shapes by holding Shift and dragging them below. And we'll drag them into our road rectangle, but below the road itself. So that way it kind of disappears back behind the road and sticks out. Okay, so I want to work on some clouds. So what we'll go ahead and do is I'm going to close this rectangle here, and we'll zoom in just a bit. I'm going to grab our rectangle tool, come straight across, pick the light purple color that we have there, and now we've got this rectangle created. Zoom in a bit more and selecting our ellipse tool. I'm going to start creating some various circle shapes here. Some ellipses, some are more circular. We want some variation again. It helps to click and drag from the right side to the left, the opposite side that you're creating them. And now, over in the layers panel, we can go ahead with the top ellipse selected, scroll down, hold Shift, and select all of them. And with our move tool, you can hold Alt and drag. You can hold Shift to keep them in line if you'd like. And we can come here and click on flip horizontal. Holding Shift, I want to bump these over this way just a little bit more. And we'll select our ellipse tool again, and we'll create a few more shapes in here. All right, the move tool will just close that gap there. So with all of those shapes created in our layers panel, start with the top ellipse and we'll just scroll all the way down to the rectangle itself, hold Shift, and now we'll come back up to the Boolean options and click on Add. So now we've got one cloud shape there. I want to create a few more. So with the ellipse tool selected, I'll create another little cloud shape. And I'm going to select the pen tool, move it in here. We'll snap it to the edge of that line. We'll click again and drag. I want to create a nice little curve. Hold space to pull the bar down just a little bit. I'll click to end that. I'll hold Shift across. I'll come back up here and create another curved line there. I'll click to close that, and we'll bring it back over to our first node to close out that entire shape. And we'll select the purple. Now we could select our move tool and bring this down just a bit. Just pull it off on the side a little bit. If we need to adjust any of the nodes, we can use our node tool, A, and select that node and drag it back in here. So something just like that. Now with the move tool, back over to our layers panel. We've got the top curve selected. So we'll come down holding shift, group all of those, and then click on add to create one shape. I can make this one just a little bit bigger. I want to click and drag this one kind of off to the side here. I'll hold Alt to duplicate it. I'm going to flip horizontal, and we'll make a smaller one for the center. Alt and drag again. And this one we'll bring off to the side. Something more like that. Now in our layers panel, I've got the top curve selected. I'll hold shift to select all of our cloud shapes, and then control to select the sun, and back up to Boolean and click on subtract. And that'll now give us the cutout shapes of the clouds. I want to create some palm trees for the scene, but to give us a little more space, I want to go ahead and open up a new document. So we'll come to File, New, and I'll create just another social media square post. I'll keep it at 144 DPI. I'll go ahead and click Create. Select the pen tool, and I'm going to go ahead and click, drag and pull up. I want a nice curve. And I could go ahead and either double click to close this and end it, or hit Escape. And I'm going to keep the stroke, and I'm just going to up the stroke. We'll go to 16. And then looking at the caps here, we'll go ahead and create a square cap. And then under Layer, at the top, we'll come down to Expand Stroke. And that now turns the stroke into a fill. The move tool could just move this over just a bit. Now, I'm going to go ahead and add a little extra detail to the outside of the tree itself. You can go ahead and leave it smooth and flat like this. If not, we're going to come in here and just click. I'm just going to create a point. We do have to come back up to our stroke menu here, and we'll lower that stroke. We can change it back to a round cap. Down here like that. And I want to close this shape off. So I want a nice, fairly triangular shape like that. And I'll come in here and I want to switch the stroke to fill. So I'll click this arrow here. I'm going to drag it in just a bit. Now I'll hold Alt to duplicate it and bring it over to the other side. And selecting both of them, I'll Alt and drag again. Bring them a little further up. I want them to be offset like this. And then we can go ahead and Alt and drag again to duplicate. I'll come up here and click Flip Horizontal. Just to give us a little variety. And we'll go ahead and line those shapes up just like that. Alt and drag. I'll pull these up a little bit further. I'm going to just rotate them a bit. I can always take this one and click Flip Horizontal there, and create a little bit more of a spike on that side. Alt again, selecting both shapes, and we're just going to work our way up the palm tree, rotating as we need. We'll rotate just like that. That should give us enough, because we're going to put the actual leaves of the palm tree here. So now I can go ahead, with my move tool selected, I can go ahead and just click and drag across all of the shapes. I'll come up to our Boolean options and click Add. And now we've got one shape here. Okay, so we'll go ahead and just drag this off to the side. Now I want to go ahead and create the actual palm leaves themselves. So I will select our pen tool. I will click, and a short distance away, not too far. The longer you make it, the skinnier the palm leaf will be. So we want to stay fairly close to our initial point. I'll click and drag again. I'll create that nice curve shape there. I'm going to give it a nice curve. I'll go ahead and click on this to end that, and we'll come back to our original point here. The circle below the pen tool shows that by clicking on it, we'll close this shape. And we'll create a fairly subtle, but still that's a slight curve there. And for our fill, I will select black. And with that shape still selected, I'm going to come in here to our knife tool. I'm going to create small, thin little triangular cutouts. So we'll just work our way across the bottom. And then on the other side as well. These I want to make a little bit smaller. And I also want to stagger them between the ones I've already made. So nice small little triangles. Now at the top here, we can come down and we can hold Shift to select the curves we don't want and delete. This is the main shape that we want to keep, so we'll click under that one, selecting that, and coming down to the bottom of those curves, we'll hit delete again. Now with our move tool, and that shape selected, we can go ahead and drag it over to our palm tree, and we can go ahead and resize this a bit. I'll go ahead and hold Alt to duplicate that and drag this one up more, make that one a little bit larger. Now I do want to go ahead and with the move tool selected, select all of these shapes and drag them towards the middle of our canvas. That way we have a little more room. And selecting top front palm leaf again, we'll go ahead and duplicate it by holding Alt and make this one a little bit smaller. I'll select this one, Alt, we'll rotate it and make this one a little bit smaller here. Now with our move tool, I could select all of these at the top. We'll leave the tree itself. I'll hold Alt and drag to duplicate, and I will flip horizontal, and we can rotate all of these and line them up just in there. With the move tool again, I could select all of the leaves. I can make them just a little shorter, can even rotate them just a bit. So something like that. Now I want to go ahead and create some grass at the bottom as well. So what I'll go ahead and do for that is I'll grab our pen tool. I will click, drag and create a nice curve. I will click on that to close it off. We'll come back down here. We'll create nice little curves like this just by pointing and clicking. And if you want a sharp edge, you could just click to close. We'll drag down here, close that off and connect it with our first one here. And for the fill color, we'll go ahead and select the black. The move tool, I'm going to go ahead and hit Alt and drag. I want to flip horizontal at the top. We'll crunch this one up a little bit just to change it a little. I want to select both of these shapes, make them just a tad smaller, just like that. And now what we could go ahead and do with the move tool is I want to select, I'm actually going to make these leaves just a hair smaller. So I want to select the top leaves and holding Control and Shift to scale them proportionally. I'm going to downsize them just a little bit. And now with the move tool, I'm going to select the leaves, the tree, and our grass shapes. And in the Boolean options, I will click Add to make one shape. I'll hold Alt to duplicate it and flip horizontal. I'm going to line these up here at the bottom and holding Shift, I want to make this one a tad smaller. We can adjust these a little bit. They don't have to line up with the grass perfectly at the bottom, but something like that. And either by using our move tool and selecting them all here, or by coming over to our layers panel, selecting the top one and hitting Control to select the bottom one. I do want to go ahead again and hit our add and the Boolean options to create one shape for both of these palm trees. So I'm going to select our palm trees here. I'll go ahead and hit Control or Command C if you're working on Mac. And I'll come back to the main image that we're working on here, and I will hit Control or Command V to paste them. I will now select our dark purple color that we've been using. I'm going to place this one off to the left. I can hold Shift. Oh, don't hold Shift. You can hold Shift if you like, but this one I'm going to not hold Shift. I'm just going to make this one a little taller. I'll hold Alt to duplicate and drag them across. I want to flip horizontal, and I want to make these a little shorter on this side. You can play around with the placement of them and find something that you like, but I think right about there will work. I do want to hold Alt to duplicate this again, and now in our layers panel, this will be the top curve section. I do want to bring it down to the bottom because I want these to be in the background. I'm going to hold Shift to scale them down and flip horizontal to give us some variety in how these trees will be crossing each other as they recede into the background. And you can, without holding Shift, change the shape of them just a little bit. Again, I will hold Alt to duplicate, Shift to make them even smaller, and again, flip horizontal. I want these to be way in the background here, so we'll make those even smaller. With the smallest background one selected here, we can select the midground one as well, Alt and drag to duplicate. We'll bring these over to the other side. This one we'll make smaller. Hold Shift, put it further in the background here. If we need to, we can always adjust and move our foreground one just a bit. And these will go ahead and make a little smaller as well, just to give us some nice variety there. Just come in here and even make this one a little bit taller. So a few final touches here. We can come over to our layers panel and we can select all the palm trees by holding Shift and right click and group. We can name this group palm trees. I want to come back down to our rectangle panel here and to our road shape here. I want to select our gradient tool. I'm going to click and drag down. I want the foreground color to be a little bit darker. The middle yellow line here, I could always make it a bit thinner. And I want to drag that into our road shape as well. Now, a cool little effect I'd like to show you for this one in particular is with our background selected, if we come up here to our color wheel area, usually it's set on opacity. So if we go ahead and click right under the circle, right under opacity, we'll switch it to noise. And what we'll go ahead and do is we're going to drag the slider. We'll drag it to about 86% or so. But you can see it adds a nice grit and texture to the background. So we'll go ahead and do that for the background. I want to do that for the sun as well. I can go back to, again, about 86% or so. You could play around, you could add a little less or a little more if you'd like. And we'll also go ahead and do that to the road and the sunburst effect that we have as well. I do want to leave the palm trees and the main background shape as well as the buildings without any noise. I like the look of that contrast, works well for a piece like this. Now a few additional options and some things that you could play around with to get the look that you'd like. One thing I would like to go ahead and do is I do want to come into our bottom rectangle and our road shape. I want to select the middle yellow line, and holding Control I will select both of the other yellow lines as well. And coming over to our transparency tool, I want to click at the bottom of the canvas and drag up towards the sun. If probably to about midway. Those lines will fade off a little bit as it's receding into the distance. Go ahead and close that rectangle. Another thing I'd like to do as well, and again, this is up to you. You can either make this change or you can play around with how it looks. But I want to select the bottom rectangle and the buildings, and I want to go ahead and just, with the move tool, holding shift, drag them down just a little bit. Something else that you could play around with too is the gradient for the background. If you'd like to have a little bit more purple, you can drag that gradient up. If you want a little more sun, you could drag it further down. You can also play around with this background gradient and change the colors to purple to maybe a light blue if you wanted it to be more at night, but that is up to you. Just a few different options of the way you can kind of customize it and play around with it a little bit more. All right, and we can also make sure that the road is tapering, so we can always come into the rectangle here, and with the road curve selected, we can zoom in here a bit. We'll select our node tool A, and we'll just drag these down and a little bit closer to each other. We can lower and closer, and then we could just simply come in here and adjust by selecting the move tool. We'll adjust these shapes here just a bit. Change the other one. And this is the great thing about vector art. Having these here, you can always come back in and adjust things without losing the work you've already done. And then we can simply pull these a little bit further in to stay behind the road. Now the last thing I'd like to do, as always, is sign our work. So we'll come down to this menu and expand it out and click on Artistic Text tool. Clicking down here at the bottom, we'll go ahead and sign our name, and I will come back up to fonts and select one I'm quite fond of and use quite often, and that is Red Rock. I'll select all the text, and holding Alt and hitting the right arrow key, I can expand the space between the text. We'll make this a nice light yellow, and then we'll shrink this down a bit just to fit right at the bottom of the road here. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this step-by-step tutorial. I really enjoy making these for you all, and if you have any questions, please let me know in the comments. If you'd like to support the channel directly, you could do so by hitting the Buy Me a Coffee link at the top of the page. And if you do decide to post this to social media, please tag me at njvalentiart. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you don't miss any new tutorials. Until next time.